2 minutes, no problem.
Yes, we are 2 minutes away.
Good. Good. I'm delighted that you're speaking. One of the issues with APAN is the P has been largely silent. So
it's always a challenge. There are so many meetings and so few people in the Pacific to do them. So
yeah, absolutely right.
Sir, we will start at 1:30 p.m. BGT time.
Yeah, it's just 1 minute away.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So we should start playing the transition.
Yes, sir.
Maybe you can wait a few seconds.
A good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all, depending on your location. Welcome to the 6th plenary session of APAN53. In this session, we will have a presentation on Digital Earth Pacific. Digital Earth Pacific is the third in a series of projects to work with global partners to make Earth observation data-free and accessible. Building on Digital Earth Australia and Digital Earth Africa, this data can be used to inform crucial decision-making that will improve lives and contribute towards a more sustainable future for the region. Dr. Stuart Minchin, Director General, the Pacific Community, SPC, will introduce the work of the Pacific Community and will illustrate how Earth observation, improved connectivity, and compute resources will improve the future of the entire region. The session will be chaired by Gerrit Bahlman, a well-known and highly respected veteran in the APAN community who has served as board chair and deputy chair and also as board director. He had been the CEO of 2 NRINs and worked as a CIO in the university sector for many years. It's our pride and privilege to get his acknowledgement to be the chair of the session. Let me brief the structure of the session. At the beginning of the session, once the chair finishes introducing the presenter, there will be a 30 minutes presentation from Dr. Stuart Minchin. The floor will then be open to the audience to ask questions for the speaker to answer. The question may be asked using Zoom question and answer for the chair to collect your questions to forward it to the speaker, or you may raise your hand for the chair to allow to ask the question by yourself. The question and answering session will be of 15 minutes duration. Finally, the chair will wrap up the session with his concluding remarks. With that note, I'm going to hand over the microphone to Honorable Chair to conduct the session. Mr. Gerrit Bahlman, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a great privilege to be able to chair this plenary session, and it's even greater privilege to try and do something about the silent P in APAN. I am delighted that Stuart Minchin is here and going to speak to us about environmental geoscience. Stuart is currently the Director General of the Pacific Community, which has emerged, I guess, and grown, Stuart, you can correct me, from the South Pacific Commission. And it's the largest intergovernmental organization in the Pacific. The Pacific Community is a science and technology for development organization, and it's owned by 27 member countries and territories in the Pacific region. It covers a vast area of our planet. The South Pacific Commission has 650 staff, and they deliver services and scientific advice to the Pacific across domains like oceans and islands and people. And they have deep expertise in food security, water resources, fisheries, disaster management, energy, maritime, management, health, statistics, education, human rights, social development, and natural resources. Stuart's got a big job and a massive area that he's responsible for. So it's my privilege and my pleasure to introduce Dr. Stuart Minchin. Stuart.
Thank you very much for that glowing introduction. That was great. I'm just going to share my screen so that I can start the presentation. Just bear with me. Hopefully you can all see that presentation as it is. So I'm going to take you through a bit of a story about the emergence of the Digital Earth Pacific capability. And the story actually begins in Australia, it travels to Africa, and then it ends up in the Pacific, which is where I am now. But I want to take you through that journey because it's a very positive and useful one, and hopefully you'll see why. So first up, why are we talking about Earth observations? And this is a study that was released in Australia in 2019 that looked at the APEC economies, the Asia Pacific Economic Community economies, and the use that they were making of Earth and marine observations. And it noted that the economic impact of the use of Earth and marine observations in the APEC economies was in 2019, $372 billion, but it was expected to grow to $1.35 trillion by 2030. So a huge growth in this sector. And interestingly, it also noted that you could gather an extra $126 billion worth of economic value through doing this work at a regional scale rather than at a country by country scale. So this is a huge opportunity, and the reason we're interested in this in the Pacific is how can the Pacific make use of this economic opportunity to grow our economic opportunities in our region. Let me explain what we're talking about with a Digital Earth Australia, Digital Earth Africa, or Digital Earth Pacific. So we've been measuring the Earth from satellites for over 40 years now. We've been gathering that data, taking photographs from space, and systematically measuring the Earth, first with Landsat and more recently with the Copernicus missions from the European Commission. We've been systematically measuring the Earth, but we haven't been making very good use of this information because for a long time, transforming those photographs from space into actionable information was very difficult and usually the domain of a remote sensing scientist or a special science skills to make that transition from photograph to decisions. So this was really the opportunity that we saw in Australia in the development of Digital Earth Australia to create a capability that a service that took those satellite images and transformed them into useful information. And this was how Digital Earth Australia was born. It takes those satellite observations, which require lots of calibration, orthorectification, atmospheric correction, and translated that into what we call analysis-ready data. This is data that's been cleaned and prepared, and then transforms that further into what we call decision-ready products. Now, let me explain what a decision-ready product looks like. And here's one that might be familiar to you. On your iPhone or your mobile phone, anywhere you are in the world, you can look up what the weather report is going to be. You are not expected to become a meteorologist to make use of this information. You're given the top temperature, the minimum temperature, whether it's going to be rainy, sunny, windy, and you know operationally that every day this forecast is updated and you can access this. This is a decision-ready product. You can use it to make decisions in your life. You can make it, use it to make decisions for your business about what you're going to do. You don't need to access the raw data that goes into this, because into a weather forecast, of course, you've got everything from satellite observations, balloon observations, sea observations, and a whole range of modelling that's going on in the background. But what you're accessing is a decision-ready product. Now, in the Earth observation domain, we didn't have decision-ready products. We had raw data. And we wondered why people were not making use of that information to make decisions. So in Australia, we developed a tool called Digital Earth Australia that developed some decision-ready products. And I'm going to share some of those decision-ready products with you now to give you an idea of the sorts of things we're talking about. So here's an example. This is a map of a wetland complex in the Murray-Darling Basin in Australia. And what you're looking at here is a series of lakes. On the right, what you're going to see is the wetness of those lakes. And you can see as we pass through time from 2002 through to about 2016, you'll see that for the first few years, there's not a lot of water in those lakes. And then in 2014, there's a big change that occurs. And there's a lot more water available in those water bodies. So actually what happened in 2014? Well, there was a policy change. The Murray-Darling Basin Agreement came into play, and these water bodies were provided with environmental water. And we can measure the impact of that change directly from satellite, and it's visible in the data, and we can see it happen. We can do this for every water body in Australia and every wetland in Australia. Likewise, sorry, to move on. Likewise, we can take finer scale assessment of every wetland. So this is a wetland in the Australian Capital Territory called Ginny Flats. And what this wetland, and what we're going to show you here is the impact that happened into this wetland when there was a bushfire that came through in 2003. This wetland complex is the home to an endangered species, the corroboree frog that you can see there. So there's strong interest in tracking the health of wetlands like this in Australia. So what we can do using Digital Earth Australia is we can show you the percentage of, at any one of these time steps, how much water, open water in the dark blue, wet vegetation in the light blue, green vegetation, photosynthetic vegetation in the green, dry vegetation in the light brown, and bare soil in the dark brown there is at each time step. So you can see there's an annual step at each year where the wetland gets wet and then dries out and gets wet and then dries out. In 2003, there was a bushfire, and you can see a big spike of bare soil after the bushfire passed, and then a gradual recovery of the green vegetation after that. But what you can see also is that the wetting pattern has changed, and this wetland has never fully recovered into the pattern that it had prior to that bushfire. So we can actually generate this kind of information for every single wetland on the continent of Australia. And this has been proving invaluable for management of environmental concerns, endangered species and the sort. We can also use this tool to map every water body. So this tool was used to look at every single water body across Australia larger than an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And Australia is the driest continent on Earth, bar Antarctica, of course. In Australia, though, there are 295,000 mapped water bodies that are larger than an Olympic-sized swimming pool. For every one of those water bodies, we can look at the footprint of that water body when it's full of water, and we can detect water across that entire water body. We can look at it when it's partly full and almost empty, and we can then track the history of every one of those water bodies in a consistent tool that we've provided online access that you can explore, and you can actually track for every water body in Australia what the history of that water body has been for the last 30 years. In this case, I've clicked on a water body here in the top left of the screen, and on the bottom you can see the trace of the history of that. What you can see is that from 1988 through to 2000, there was no water in that location. So that was before this. This is obviously a dam that was built on a farm. Before that dam existed, up until 2000, there was no water. And then you can see the pattern of filling and emptying of that dam over time. And we can do this for every water body on the continent. And this is an updated, capable monitoring tool to continue to monitor. This was actually used in anger during the big bushfires that happened at the end of 2019 in Australia, because we were able to provide a map to the firefighters who were using helicopters and water bombing aircraft to identify which water bodies within a helicopter flight of the bushfire currently had water in them. So this is an active monitoring tool, not just a historical view, and it's an example of a decision-ready product. You don't actually need to know anything about remote sensing to make use of this product. You get a map of where the water is and how much there is and which water bodies have water in them today. Not only that, we can then look at every water body and say, how is the quality of that water? So this is an example of a lake in the middle of Canberra, the capital city of Australia. And what you're looking at here is the trace of a transect running through that lake from the upper end of the lake down to the lowest point of the lake. So the upper end is on the right-hand side of the graph, the lower end is on the left-hand side of the graph. What you're seeing in colours is red is poor water quality, blue is good water quality. So looking through the years from 1987 at the top of the y-axis to 2014 on the bottom of the y-axis, you can see that in the 80s and 90s, as we move down that graph, there was poor water quality all the way down the length of that lake. Then in around 2000, that changed and there was much better water quality, at least in the lower end of the lake. What had changed at that time, again, there was a policy change and an upgrade of a sewage treatment plant and the installation of wetland water treatment systems. So you can see here in direct terms the impact of policy change on this particular water body. But you can generate this for every single water body on the continent. All of Australia, every water body can generate this kind of information. It's not just useful for water. Here's an example for agriculture. So the little black screen or the black highlight in the middle is the field that we're looking at. What you're looking at here is in green, photosynthetic vegetation, in brown, dry vegetation, and in red, bare soil. What you're looking at here is a pattern of the wheat crop that was planted in this field. Each year, this wheat crop would green up, dry off and be harvested. And then the next year, green up, dry off and be harvested. You can see some years are more vigorous than others. And in 2004, there's a pattern change. And that's when that wheat crop was turned into an almond plantation. And you can see the biomass growth of the almond trees happening in that field. We can generate this kind of information for every single field on this farm, every single farm in this region, every single field on the continent, and generate this and use it to forecast yields and the current status of these fields. In fact, there is a startup company, this is a company called SIBO Labs, that's taking that raw product from Digital Earth Australia, transforming it using their own machine learning algorithm into a measurement of the amount of feed available in every beef farm in Australia. And they're delivering that to every beef farmer in Australia through an application that can then, those beef farmers can choose which fields to move their cattle into based on a satellite assessment of how much grass there is growing in each of their fields. So these are great examples of using economic or generating economic value out of these tools. We can track coastal change. So here is 30 years of erosion on this bottom island and deposition occurring on this top island as the ocean currents strip sand off and move it along the coast. We can actually quantify this. We can measure mangroves. So here is the progress of 15 years of mangrove growth in the Roper River. You can see mangroves growing up this tributary. And in 2014, as the clock changes, you'll see a dieback event happen in this coastline. So we can track the health of every mangrove stand in Australia. You can track the impact of cyclones as they come through and the recovery of the mangroves. So this is done at a continental scale. We can measure every mangrove stand on the coastline of the Australian continent. We can track coastline change and erosion, deposition, sea level rise, and we can actually measure that quantitatively across every part of Australia. So Digital Earth Australia was a new capability that turned these satellite observations into analysis-ready data and delivered decision-ready products. And it's having a huge impact in Australia in supporting all sorts of government decisions, private sector decisions, and creating economic benefit. So we thought this was a great innovation, but it was all done using free and open data. And in Australia, we decided to open source the code base for this tool and make it available to the world. So that code base is called Open Data Cube, and there are now Open Data Cube implementations happening all across the world, making use of the free and open satellite data that is available globally. So there are Open Data Cube implementations in Mexico, in Colombia, in Brazil, in Europe, in Vietnam, and in Africa. And why you're seeing so many dots in Africa is because we started with 5 countries in Africa, but then we developed a program called Digital Earth Africa to take that same capability, Digital Earth Australia's capability, to the entire African continent, to all 54 countries in Africa. And that was how Digital Earth Africa was born. So we worked with all of these 5 initial countries plus Uganda that were interested in developing developing Open Data Cube implementations, and brought a whole bunch of other countries who were very interested in this technology along for the ride. We worked with those countries to identify what use cases this could be put to. You know, what were their highest priority use cases in each of each of their countries, and we started working with many institutions across Africa to try and align all the effort here to generate a capability for all of Africa. I'm going to show you just one of those examples that came up as a very high priority use case in Ghana, and that was the issue of illegal gold mining. So what you're seeing here is a picture of a river, the Ankobra River in Ghana, going through the center of the screen here in 2002. If we have a look at the 2017 picture, you'll see it looks very different. So I'll just flick back and forward. Okay, so all of that difference is illegal gold mining that's occurred, where an illegal gold miner has gone up the river in a boat. They've moved into the adjacent forest. They've cleared an area. They've dug a pit to extract the gold. And while it's being extracted, they've used pumps to keep the water out. And then as soon as they've extracted the gold, they move another 10 meters into the forest and they dig another pit. And they leave an environmental scar behind with all sorts of damaging exposed chemicals and soils that are damaging, and they're very hard to spot until you stumble across them. So the Ghanaian government were interested in using Digital Earth Africa to detect illegal gold mining and to send inspectors out to identify that when it was occurring. Due to Digital Earth Africa, the Ghanaian government has already prosecuted over 43 illegal gold mining operations and used this in anger to actually generate, to stop illegal extraction of gold and to save, to have a huge economic benefit. The estimate that the World Economic Forum made that of the value of this, if it was taken up by all the other African governments through having this service available across all of Africa, would be that annually there would be a $900 million benefit to African economies through the reduction of illegal gold mining. Okay, so I'm going to play a little video now that explains the journey going from Australia to Africa, and then we'll get on to the Pacific. So here's a little video.
Australia is committed to using new technologies, new science to help us drive sustainable development. Digital Earth Australia is an example of this, where we're taking petabytes of freely available satellite data, making sure that it's tailored for Australia, whether it be for governments who really want to use this data to help drive better policy making, better investments in protecting and enhancing our environment, whether it be the public who just want to understand how is their local community changing through time, or whether it be for businesses who want to use this rich information to drive increased productivity and increased profitability across the entire Australian economy.
We can already start to see benefits from some of the products that are being developed in Digital Earth Australia. The agricultural sector is benefiting from the fractional cover products that we have, and water resource managers are benefiting from the water observations from space product. These products have far-reaching implications, so they can be applied anywhere from Cambodia to Africa to anywhere in the world.
I've been working in a project with Cambodia in order to create an open data cube. The idea is to use satellite imagery and a set of environmental data sets to produce a range of water management and drought predictive tools. I'm excited about being able to upskill individuals from a country to use an open data cube, to be able to become part of the open data cube community, which is all free, all open source.
We're very excited about the new African Regional Data Cube. It brings this new data technology to 5 different countries in Africa that typically are not users of satellite data. And they're going to have this chance now to look at the Earth from totally new ways and to use it for sustainable development goals.
Initially, data was being siloed as a scientific tool, but what I've learned is data actually is an everyday thing that should inform, transform, and even inform how we do our daily business, from our own livelihood to environment and to policy and to how we engage as networks with globally and locally.
We are especially pleased that with the launch of the African Regional Data Cube, that will begin to make the benefits of data revolution more real and tangible to data communities who have often been left behind. This is a big step towards the destination of who we want to be in 2030.
We now have the opportunity to bring the outcomes that have been demonstrated through this technology in Australia to benefit every African through the development of Digital Earth Africa. Digital Earth Africa will build on the fantastic work done to develop the African Regional Data Cube across 5 countries in Africa, but will effectively scale that to the whole of the 54 countries across the African continent. Digital Earth Africa will deliver an operational platform providing continuous updates of the decision-ready Earth observation products for use by governments, by NGOs, by businesses and individual citizens, updated every time a new satellite flies overhead. It will really support the sustainable development of Africa. It will deliver improved water, food, environmental and disaster security for every African citizen and improve the lives of all Africans.
So you can see that was a younger version of me before Digital Earth Africa was actually up and running, but it is now operational. And last year, the World Economic Forum did an economic value study of Digital Earth Africa that identified that in just the 3 sectors of the African Earth observation industry, agricultural productivity and illegal gold mining, just in those 3 use cases, $2.3 billion per year of positive economic impact on African economies for what is a $7 million a year investment. So huge economic gains through having this service available. And when I moved from Geoscience Australia, as you just saw, into SPC and the Pacific, I'm interested in the Pacific having these same opportunities that Australia and Africa have made use of. So this data does exist in our region. It's already there, but we're not making use of it. So Digital Earth Pacific is about taking that capability that we've demonstrated works across the entire continent of Australia, across the entire continent of Africa, and bringing that to our blue Pacific continent for some of the same issues and some new issues. So it will have a big opportunity to help us with climate change impacts, coastal change and inundation, coral bleaching, maritime surveillance, marine water quality, agriculture, water and vegetation as some of the examples you've already seen. So we've been working hard with Digital Earth Pacific in phase 1. We got some seed funding from the Australian government and the US government to do a scoping phase for Digital Earth Pacific. So we've worked with a number of countries in the Pacific to understand their priority needs and what they primarily want to use this tool for, to create a prototype infrastructure that we've developed in the region, to develop some early win products across pilot countries, and to develop a business case. And we're now in the process of raising funding to make this operational for the Pacific. We've had great engagement across the Pacific with many member governments who've been really interested in this capability coming to their region. And they have identified what we call Tier 1 and Tier 2 use cases. Tier 1 use cases were examples of products that every single country we engage with said that would be useful to them. Things that we know we can do because we've done it in Australia, done it in Africa, and we can do it in the Pacific, and things that they will find useful. So we want to roll these products, Tier 1 use cases, out quickly. Tier 2 use cases were cases where either some countries have identified these as high priorities and others haven't, or there's more research to be done to develop the algorithms that are required. However, these will also continue to be worked on by the community. So Digital Earth Pacific is about replicating what we did in Australia, in Africa, and bringing it to the Pacific. And I'm just going to play a little video here for Digital Earth Pacific to give you a feel for what's cooking.
Digital Earth Pacific will allow easy access to satellite data, giving them a view of their land from up above on a very regular basis. By having a Digital Earth Pacific framework, we now bring all of these satellite data components and all the connected data sets together in one environment that makes it really easy for the users to take advantage of that data to solve the problems that they care about most.
Digital Earth Pacific will be a critical tool to address oceans and land use planning and development as we face challenges of sea level rise, coastal inundation, and other impacts of climate change.
There's enormous potential for Digital Earth Pacific to have economic impact in the region. Making better decisions for farmers, for resource managers, for fishermen in the region will allow things to be done more efficiently and generate economic returns. The development of a similar service called Digital Earth Africa was recently assessed by the World Economic Forum as impacting African economies positively by up to $2.3 billion per year. So that's for an investment of a service for Africa of only $7 million, a $2.3 billion return.
In my view, Digital Earth Pacific has the potential to be a key tool in actioning the strategy for the Blue Pacific Ocean, as it will bring innovation through access to science, knowledge, infrastructure, and technology that is open and responsive to the specific needs and challenges of the Pacific region.
For investors looking to have real impact in a region of the world that is going to be most impacted and earliest impacted by climate change risks, by disasters, in one of the poorest parts of the world and most challenged by the management of our natural resources, here is a real opportunity for you to have an impact investment across the entire region.
There's a golden opportunity here to bring data to this region and to show the people in this region how valuable it can be to not only understand their past, but to understand how things are changing and where they need to be in the future.
So that's Digital Earth Pacific, and I'm happy to answer questions or start a conversation now with the audience. So back to you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll just turn my microphone on. It's one of the dangers of using this technology. That was stunning, Stuart. Absolutely stunning. Let me ask the audience, are there any questions that you'd like to direct to Stuart, either via the chat channel or by raising your hand, in which case you can speak the question. There's one coming in. Let me just pick up on that. Is there any role for NRENs to help accumulate the data? Did ARNet play any role?
So that's a great question. So ARNet has played a role actually in Australia, helping with the connectivity issues of accessing the data, both to Geoscience Australia as a member of ARNet and connectivity into the National Supercomputer Facility in Australia. ARNet has not played a significant role so far in the Pacific. We're doing most of the development of Digital Earth Pacific in the cloud. In fact, our pilot is happening as part of Microsoft's Planetary computer at the moment. What we're wanting to do is primarily have the processing happening in the cloud and having the decision-ready products delivered to people in the Pacific, which needs a lot less bandwidth than actually loading the data per se.
So we've got a lot of people from Southeast Asia here, and one of our listeners, Suhami Napas, would like to know, is there any plan for Southeast Asia?
It's a great question again. So there has been work, as I highlighted, with the map of where the Open Data Cube implementations have happened. There's been work done in Cambodia, in Vietnam, and others in the Southeast Asian region. So there's certainly some skills there to do it. We haven't done the whole region in the way that we've tackled Africa and Australia, but there's certainly the opportunity to do that. In fact, Digital Earth Latin America is cooking at the moment, and being led by Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia, who are all working on replicating this capability for the entire Latin America region. There's no reason why it can't be done in Asia, but I currently happen to be driving the Pacific, but there's no reason why someone else can't take the lead in applying this to Southeast Asia. It's as we said, it's proven technology, it's open source, and it just takes a bit of persistence and willpower to get the investment over the line at a regional level to make these kind of capabilities available.
Stuart, this is such a powerful tool. People are thinking about how do they get on board? How do they get involved? What do they do? Is that something that you can help us with? Where should people go if they're interested in getting access to the data cube or access the technology, or how to go about setting up a Southeast Asian version of Digital Earth?
Well, there's a real network building of people that are making use of this technology. Geoscience Australia, and if you do a Google search for Digital Earth Australia, getting in touch with that team is a good starting point, because they play a bit of a leadership role in coordinating the global network of developers that are dealing with this. So there is a technical network, if you like, that's involved. Another pathway for countries is to engage through GEO, the Intergovernmental Group on Earth Observations, which have been very active in assisting this development. And so there are many ways to get involved in this broader Open Data Cube community, but the starting point would be to look to either Google Digital Earth Australia or Open Data Cube, and those two searches will take you directly to the communities that are working on those areas.
We have commercially minded people in the audience, and one of our questions is, do you have any competitors?
That's a great question. The quick answer is no, because the way I think about these Digital Earth capabilities is like infrastructure. This is digital infrastructure. This is like the road network, the port network, the rail network. In that sense, what we're doing is lowering the barrier for companies to then be able to provide value add. So the challenge is we've had 40 years of access to this data, and companies have not made use of this, have not built up, except in very limited cottage industry kind of examples, because there's just too much investment to make in transforming that raw data into analysis ready data and actual products that are useful. And every small company can't afford to hire an army of remote sensing scientists and whatnot to transform that data themselves. So what we're trying to do with these Digital Earth capabilities is actually, we're not trying to compete with the private sector. We're actually trying to create some base products that everyone finds useful, that then enables the private sector to value add to that. And I showed you an example of that with the SIBO Labs value adding for the beef farmers, right? So SIBO Labs could not afford to do all of the fundamental processing of the data, but they can afford to take the decision-ready product we've made and value add to it, because they now know that decision-ready product will be routinely generated operationally, and it will be there for the next 30 years being continuously generated. So they can build their business on top of that data and value add to it with confidence. And that's what we see the role of this: do the processing once, get it all ready to go, and think of it like infrastructure that enables a whole bunch of economic opportunity for the private sector as well as the public sector to make use of this.
The APAN network engineering streams have been looking, as they do annually within APAN, at the growth of networks around the world, and in particular observing that the number of cables and number of connections in the Pacific has grown significantly in the last 5 years. Clearly, this is the sort of fundamental architectural infrastructure that Digital Earth depends on. Are you finding constraints around communications and networking connections, or are you working on a centralized model? How are you dealing with all of the nations in the Pacific that are so isolated? Many of them may not have connections. How are you dealing with that kind of challenge?
Yeah, look, that's always a challenge. It's a challenge that's changing though rapidly. There is increasing connectivity. There's a lot of work going on to improve connectivity in the region. we are being careful because of the fragile connectivity in the region, that we're not trying to create a process where people have to download all of the data, right? So the data will, as I said, sit in the cloud. The processing will be done in the cloud. And then what will be downloaded is the final product, which is much lighter on connectivity. But there is rapidly changing technology. We're seeing with Starlink, Elon Musk's program, the potential for roughly $400 investment. Every village in the Pacific could potentially have fast internet access. So this is a lot cheaper than laying a cable. And a lot quicker than laying a cable. So there are transformative opportunities coming very fast down the track at the moment that will change the opportunities that are available for this kind of technology. And importantly, in the Pacific, we'd like to see a future where a young person growing up in the Pacific now can have that connectivity, whether it be through a Starlink terminal or a cable or some other technology, that they can actually engage. They can come up with a good idea to make use of these kind of digital assets to develop a business that they can then export and sell back to Africa or Australia, and stay connected to their local community and their culture, which is not the case at the moment. In the case at the moment, in many cases, people have to leave the Pacific to gain employment and then send money back to their family to keep them supported. And we want to develop futures in the region that where Pacific people can engage in a global digital economy from where they live, and provide services to the world through that pathway. So connectivity is a key part of that.
Fantastic. I think we're probably at a point where we should just ask the audience one more time if there's any more questions that they would like to pose. I have one about drone data, which is a question saying, well, can you use these techniques to perhaps pick up images from other sources such as drones? Is it generalizable, or is the primary image very specific and tied to what satellite's producing?
No. Potentially you could use it for drone data. The challenge will be with drone data, tying it accurately spatially, and transforming it into that analysis-ready data where you've corrected for auto-rectification, angles and other noise. But there's huge opportunity both for drone data, high-resolution satellite imagery. Conceptually, the technology can deal with all of that. One of the biggest challenges is transforming that data in a consistent way, because often the drone imagery is not calibrated or tooled as in the same way that
resolution variations and everything else.
Exactly. But certainly an opportunity for development there.
Stuart, I found this fascinating, and I'm sure that all of our audience members have too. Thank you very much. It's a very exciting project. Is there anything that APAN can do to help you? Have you thought about that?
Well, I think we're trying to build awareness at the moment about this project. I think there are many connections that APAN has with global companies in this kind of space. So there's opportunity there, as we said, for an impact investment if companies are wanting to look at their green credentials or climate credentials to support projects like this. And of course, we're always looking for skills and talent and expertise to make use of this. My interest also, I've got to say, is not just for the Pacific. I'd like to see this technology available globally, right? So, and I don't have enough arms and legs myself to do that. So, it'd be great if someone gets enthused by this and takes up the charge to make this happen in their own country or their own region as well. So and we can certainly help with lessons learned and support for that over time.
I'm sure if people have an interest in following this up, you're not a bad place to start in terms of asking the initial questions about what they want to do.
Sure, very happy to. Yeah.
So on behalf of everybody, I'd like to thank you. That's been an extremely interesting presentation, and it's a delight to have such a loud P in APAN. Thank you very much indeed, Stuart. Can I hand you back to the Master of Ceremonies? Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks to Dr. Stuart Minchin for his insightful presentation and to Gerrit Bahlman for conducting the session as chair. That ends today's first session. Now it will be sessions for the sponsors. We again show our profound gratitude to all the sponsors of the event. Going on, in this session, we will have a small presentation from one of our platinum sponsors, Data Edge Limited. Managing Director of Data Edge, Mr. Asifuzzaman, is going to speak on Data Edge, the payment infrastructure, and its impact on educational institutes. Mr. Asifuzzaman, sir, I would humbly request you to take the floor.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. Thank you for giving this opportunity. I was listening to Stuart. It was really a fascinating presentation and very helpful for everyone. Very interesting presentation. I am, as already said, I'm Mohammad Asifuzzaman. I'm the Managing Director of Data Edge. I would like to share the presentation now. Is it visible? Hi, is the presentation visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Just to give a brief about our company, we were established in 2002 with only 7 members. Now we have roughly 100 plus people. The company was founded by professionals and banking technology experts. Technology is our core business. We're not an offshoot of other businesses. We have few select sectors: financial institutions, government, telecoms, and education, of course, healthcare. We have reasonable experience in complex infrastructure and application-based turnkey projects. We have the necessary skills and expertise on both areas. We have a reasonable track record of on-time, on-budget implementations. In application side, we offer a mix of off-the-shelf OEM software as well as our own developed software products, which offers customers the global best practice as well as local compliance and local unique requirements. We invest heavily on people development. So whatever we offer, we have our own certified resources. And we have been a financially stable company over the last 10 years. A bit on our offerings. So we offer the entire range of computing infrastructures and wired and wireless network infrastructure. We also offer in security space all cybersecurity solutions as well as data security solutions. Also the access authentication and encryption kind of solutions. Certain enterprise applications we offer from OEMs like Oracle, Microsoft, Keynote, those kind of companies like core banking, card management system, ERP, ML systems. Those are mostly for financial institutions. We have some own developed IP also in payment sections for commercial banks, ID document management kind of solution. We have some BI skills and reconciliations related IP also. Then the infrastructure and data management optimization kind of solutions, parts solutions, and we also offer services around.
Your slide is not moved.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I think mostly I talked about it, talked about the solutions. So we also provide some services like system migration, project management, and capacity building. Some of our signature projects have been core and internet banking solutions in 7 financial institutes. We have implemented card management system in 2 financial institutes, EMV-based card management system, which offer the highest security in card system. We have implemented the entire computing and virtualized platform for countries' leading boards, the stock exchange. We have done the machine-readable passport and visa project for government of Bangladesh. Then we had also done the automatic clearinghouse and EFT project for the central bank, which was a very interesting project because it covers all the commercial banks of the country. We have done some business intelligence projects, which covers the entire reporting solution for the banks. And we did some reconciliation kind of things, which saved banks a lot of manual labors. And of course, we have done this project with HECEP, with BDRIN, for the campus network of 19 universities. It's a very recent project. I wanted to touch upon one of our interest area, the payment systems. So, as I said, one of our signature projects was this automatic clearinghouse. So in 2010, Bangladesh Bank moved to image-based automation and check clearing system from manual clearing. And they also introduced message-based payment systems. So it was termed a 50-year leapfrog by the industry specialist. Basically, previously, every bank had to go to central bank with a bunch of checks and some data, and the clearing would take quite a while. So after implementation of this solution, the check clearing was for cities. It is now being done within the same day or the next day. But it has actually benefited the rural areas where the check clearing used to take from 30 to 60 days. And several common paper-based transactions were replaced with electronic transactions like dividend of shares, some government payments, interbank transactions, etc. I wanted to share a bit of data on the trend for payment systems. So there has been an increase in payment system revenue for 7 years at 7% rate. There was a dip because of the pandemic. But pandemic also made people adopt more of the digital payment methods. So it's expected the growth rate will go back to 7% or more. A lot of consolidation or platform optimization is going on across the globe. USA, Europe is trying to consolidate all its non-cash payments to one integrated payment infrastructure. There are several initiatives like TIPS, RT1, TCH. TIPS is a target instant payment settlement. So there are different bodies driving these projects. In India, there has been a project of direct benefit transfer, which actually removes many of the intermediaries and the gains estimated by the government is at $10 billion. There has been several initiatives going on in ASEAN countries to integrate their country payment infrastructure with each other, like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. Even payment internal payment structure of several countries, some works are going on, and SWIFT's GPI service is being tested, which will enable actually cross-border payments also. Then a little bit about cryptos. I think everyone is aware of what is crypto. It's basically a digital form of money built on blockchain. There are 100 plus cryptos in circulation, 1,000 plus cryptos in circulation now. There is, with cryptocurrency, how it's different from formal currency is there is no central authority and it uses decentralized control. It's getting very popular, but regulators in many countries are a little bit cautious. Some warn against it, try to dissuade users. Many think cryptocurrency will be a route to a fairer future economy because actually many doesn't like the central bank control over money. While many things it's creating sort of anarchy in the market with no regulations. So from that perspective, BIS it has member banks across the world. It's mainly members are all banks. So they have launched a concept of CBDC that is called central bank digital currency, which is a highly secure digital version of the country's official currency. When they announced it, the purpose was mainly to contain the unregulated cryptos. So BIS is still driving the rules and regulations around it. It's still not in circulation. One of the things maybe citizens may have individual accounts directly with the central banks, which they are terming retail CBDC. The initial study shows if CBDC can be applied in cross-border payments, there can be a savings of $100 billion, which is the 80% of annual intermediary cost. And the Central Bank of China has actually launched a CBDC named ECNY in April 2020. And so far, 20 plus million wallets and some transactions of $5.4 billion have been settled through CBDC. Payment systems growth in Bangladesh, as mentioned, the BATCH project was done in 2010 and RTGS in 2012, which enabled account-to-account quick or instant transfers ability. And then there was this national payment switch in 2014, which enabled card-to-card real-time transactions at a fraction of cost, because previously everyone had to go through international gateways like Visa and Master. Bangladesh has issued multiple mobile financial service licenses, which has actually enabled a significant number of unbanked population to be able to conduct financial transactions using mobile device. It's probably a bit old data. The current transaction volume overall, including all members, is almost 10 million per day. And the amount is BDT 2,000 crore per day. ICT Ministry is also undertaking, it's currently ongoing, the ITTP project, which will enable inter-MFS transactions. I mean, if a customer is have MFS 1 account and another customer has MFS 2 account, they can actually transact in a seamless manner. there are some concept level discussion going on for a unified payment structure where all government organizations, regulators, utility companies, education institutions, hospitals can be connected, and through which any payments can be channeled from any banking, agent banking, MFS, whatever the account base. So it's at a very concept level. And there has been no decision on allowing cryptocurrency or joining the CBDC initiative as far as we know. I found a little bit of interesting information from a Forbes study that our younger generations are not actually keen on cash or even credit cards. They are more into one is type-wise, they're more into debit. They don't want to take on debt, and they also prefer actually purely digital methods. The global Generation Z population is almost 2.5 billion, and 9 of 10 of them live in emerging markets. So the changes and the demands on payment systems are mainly driven by Asian emerging markets. Bangladesh also has a very young population, and it can be also a driver to innovations. And also the people who study in our high schools, universities are mostly representatives of Generation J. So while doing the 19th Anniversary Campus Network, we found out that UGC through BDRN has really done a very fantastic network for connecting all the universities. I was also going through this concept of a virtual payment system in the education institutes, which I think will be very helpful if the universities think of implementing. All education institutes have a very diversified payment needs and processes, and the new demands are coming up. It's a very dynamic environment, so every now and then there are new demands. Some educational institutes, probably not in Bangladesh, had introduced physical campus cards, but physical cards are not really able to cope with the increasing demands. And technology around payment system is also rapidly developing. There are aggregation payments, virtual cards, big data, artificial intelligence kind of thing, blockchain, mobile internet. So overall campus intelligence can also improve. And virtual payment system can actually integrate all service fields, living, payment, learning, authentication of teachers and students to provide on-campus services, public services, or commercial services, or even enhanced services. And cryptos can be incorporated if the regulators allow. This I actually found in the research paper of one of the universities from Jinan, China. So that sets some criteria for a virtual payment systems. So it should be interfacing with the mainstream technologies, browsers, QR code, subscription payment, password-free payment, all those kinds. And since there will be many channels, there should be automatic reconciliation mechanisms. There should be perfect fund settlement systems so that there should not be any problems later. So the virtual payment system can connect to bank systems or schools or universities' own financial systems. It should also support payment processing as well as refunds and ease of inquiries. There should be a robust account management system. It should be a secure, open platform So supporting third-party systems, other electronic payment platforms, third-party applications, payment agents. And although I found it for a specific university, but the way I think the current network between BDN and all the universities exist, I mean, I think BDN can also think of owning such a virtual payment infrastructure and offering service to all the universities. Actually, even cross-institution payments can be done, because occasionally one university offers a workshop or training, and people from other universities can join. So that kind of payments can also be done. This is a roughly schematic diagram, but as I said, it will keep changing. There may be new requirements, new demands, and new technology coming up all the time. Some of the advantages that can be acquired through this virtual payment system, from the perspective of users, they can maintain a one unified account and connect their account, card, MFS accounts to it as a wallet, as one wallet. It will support multiple payment methods as per the user's requirement, and it can adopt those quickly. Student, teachers, administrators will have the flexibility to choose their own payment methods. And of course, it will offer a improved user experience. From the perspective of the management of the educational institutes, they can offer multiple payment methods for any project or any initiative, any workshop, or the regular requirements. Integration of card and other electronic account will simplify account management. It will be easy to track who has paid, who hasn't paid, or to follow up. And financial management will become much easier because of the unified platform. From the perspective of merchants, every university has some merchants offering various services. I'm sure like the canteen or library can also be considered. So merchants will be able to offer QR code based payment or other payment methods, and they can easily track their own accounting also. Other advantages are mostly similar, but there are multiple payment models available, flexible application, and unified interface will also reduce difficulty of connection. So it doesn't need several links to connect the various service providers, and authorization management will be easier and more secure. So this is just a concept level. I think this will be quite useful for the education institutes, because right now, as I understood from our younger colleagues, that payment for any service or anything in the universities is still quite difficult. It uses up a lot of time. There are a lot of queuing, and also record keeping and everything is also a challenge. So basically, this is what my presentation covers. It's at a very concept level. It's not like we have developed this infrastructure. I'm also not sure from regulatory point of view if there are some restrictions to be considered. So, but overall, I thought it was a good concept for the universities to adopt. Thank you. my
Thanks to
presentation.
Mr. Asifuzzaman, Managing Director, Data Edge Limited, for his excellent presentation. Also thanks to him for coming up as Platinum sponsor and helping the cause of APAN. There was another scheduled session from one of our Platinum sponsors, Younus Group, but as Managing Director of Younus Group is engaged with some other urgent activity, he couldn't be able to turn up. We wish all the good wishes for Younus Group. There, we end today's session, and this was the final plenary of APAN53. Stay safe and have a good time. Wish to meet you again at APAN54 in China. And defeating the deadly pandemic, hopefully we can meet there in person. Goodbye to all.